Hello friends, this is Adam with Movie Guy 365, and in this video I'm going to give you my personal pet peeves of being a 4K Blu-ray collector. If you're new to the channel, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit that bell notification. You can also find me over Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd, that Movie Guy 365. Okay, in this video, I am going to give you my personal pet peeves of being a 4K Blu-ray collector. Now, when it comes to pretty much any hobby, there are things that sometimes annoy us. When it comes to physical media in particular, as it is, not as popular as, let's say, streaming, there are a lot of things that still kind of irritate us, from time to time. It's nothing too serious. It's just kind of a fun video to talk about things like this and maybe just, get things off our chest. But yeah, definitely in the comment section below, if you have pet peeves of your own for being a 4K collector, please list them in the comments and we'll definitely talk about it. Okay, so let's not waste any time. Let's dive right into my first pet peeve. This first one is not necessarily exclusive to being a 4K collector. In fact, ever since, I would say even DVD days, there are a lot of times that this question gets asked, usually from a friend or an acquaintance or even a stranger online. And I see it almost weekly, on Facebook or in the forums. And that is, why do you still collect discs? This one I could honestly do a separate video of, and I've kind of touched on this in previous videos, such as my iTunes video. And it's really, I think at the end of the day, it's kind of like a mix of a lot of things. But for me personally, one of the big reasons is I'm a collector. I like to actually have physical copies of something I enjoy in my hand, whether it is a book, like a novel or a comic book, or when it comes to music, I like to, back in the day I would have CDs. But for me personally, I think movies are a big part of what I like to collect. And having physical editions of these has always been important to me. Yeah, streaming is an option, I understand that, but I feel it's kind of like they don't really understand where we're coming from. And also, when it comes to having a physical copy, you're less at risk of having something, let's say, digitally altered when it comes to online. Streaming, they like to make alterations sometimes, change music or censor something. That is very little likely going to happen if you have a physical copy on disc. At the end of the day, I just think when people ask that question, they don't quite understand where you're coming from, and I do try to explain it, and I'm not expecting to convert them into a physical movie collector. That's not what my intention is, but maybe just kind of educate them as why I like to collect things on 4K physical media. So yeah, I know, music lovers with LPs and all that sort of have that same kind of thing, but for me, a physical copy is always better, and the actual quality of the disc is arguably better than a streaming copy. So you have that also going for it. But yeah, at the end of the day, I like to collect things. I like the best possible version, and that happens to be on a physical copy. Another pet peeve of mine, and I know this bothers a lot of collectors of physical media as well, is when we get something in the mail or when we pick something up at the store. If you're a Steelbook collector, it's bent or there's a spine slash or something like, slipcover is ripped or missing altogether. I've had all these instances happen to me, and that's pretty much the reason why I like to go in store to actually examine what I'm picking up. I don't like to rely on, let's say, a delivery service. Best Buy, as much as I like the retailer, a lot of times when I get something in the mail, there's going to be a problem with it, whether it is a bent Steelbook or in the case of a new movie is missing a slipcover that definitely had one. Those are things that kind of bother me. I know a lot of people feel the same way, and I know with physical media disappearing in stores and online sales being more and more likely to be the way going forward, this is something that's going to be a risk, a higher risk going, into the future. So this is something that's a little bit irritating to me. I know a lot of people feel the same way. Another pet peeve is pretty much a studio thing, and that is when they release a 4K movie and it has a bad transfer or no audio upgrade. And of course, we all know the famous, example, which is being Terminator 2 Judgment Day on 4K. It absolutely does not look good, and it does not represent what 4K Ultra HD can provide us as, movie watchers. This one is really kind of the outlier, but when it comes to the audio upgrades, I think that one personally bothers me more. There are plenty of movies out there, and there's certain studios that typically do this more than others that don't even bother with the upgrade. You know, when it comes, I would say Disney and what little physical media they release on 4K now, if it's an older film, typically it won't have an audio upgrade, or they won't make any kind of effort to do so. And, you know, there's also, you know, other studios do this as well. I know this is a case-by-case basis, but when I see a movie that obviously is screaming for an upgrade, I would like that included as part of, you know, the premium, you know, we pay on 4K. It's more than the picture. And I think the audio really is a big, important factor when it comes to your purchase. So yeah, for that reason, it's a pet peeve. It's something that really, it's probably happens more often than we realize, but yeah, that's definitely something to keep in mind if you're a 4K collector. And just piggybacking off that last point, as much as I love an upgrade, I would also like the original audio track included on pretty much any 4K release. I know there are a lot of purists out there, and occasionally I like to wear that hat myself, but I would say Universal Pictures is famous for not putting original audio tracks on their 4K discs. And sometimes they'll go even like that middle ground where they'll use a previously released, you know, Blu-ray audio, like a 5.1, and they won't upgrade it to Atmos or a DTS:X, but then they also will not include the original mono or, you know, stereo track. That to me is very perplexing. I'm sure it doesn't take up a lot of space on the disc, so why they don't include it, I chalk that up to almost laziness at this point. And once again, purists really harp on this particular point well, but I think for me, it's something I would like to see. Occasionally, I do want to watch a movie with the original audio turned on. And, you know, it's just something that I would like to see more of. Universal, definitely singling them out, but there are other studios that do this one as well. Another pet peeve that a lot of 4K physical collectors really can unite on, and that is 4K digital only releases. I think this one is something that it does bother a lot of us that happens, and I feel that there's several titles that would sell very well physically, but for some reason they've only gotten a digital release. The recent release of Guy Ritchie's Wrath of Man only got a Blu-ray release here in the States, 4K digital only, but over internationally they're getting a 4K physical copy. So, you know, go figure. They assume that it wouldn't sell well here, but I find it funny that the same day Guy Ritchie's Snatch got a 4K release. I understand it's different studios, Snatch being Sony and Wrath of Man being Warner Brothers. I get that, but it just struck me as a little bit entertaining in that area. But yeah, I think, you know, when there's also certain movies that came out on Blu-ray that you wonder, this would have made an incredible 4K. I would say Greenland being one example. That was also released internationally on a physical 4K. So who knows why, you know, things are released a certain way in certain territories, but I would say I would like to see more 4K digital only releases get a physical release. I think a lot of us would agree with that as a physical media collector. This next pet peeve is a little bit sensitive when it comes to us as collectors. And I think there are a lot of us that are kind of split in this personal issue. So I'll handle this one with care. And that is when somebody says 2K upscales are not worth picking up on 4K Ultra HD. I wholeheartedly disagree with this statement. I feel that a lot of people forget that the big selling point of Ultra HD Blu-ray is going to be the HDR Dolby Vision gratings. These are what really set apart what we get over on 1080p Blu-ray. You know, the 4K resolution is nice, I understand that, but there are also cost, you know, prohibitive measures from a movie like Avengers Endgame, which is a 2K upscale, getting a true 4K picture. It has to do with mostly rendering special effects in 4K. It's very cost prohibitive. So as a result, there's a lot of special effect heavy movies that are technically 2K upscales, but that doesn't mean they can't look amazing on the formats. Take a look at Pacific Rim. Honestly, one of the best looking Ultra HD Blu-rays on the market. It's a 2K upscale. I know there's going to be a lot of disagreement on this one, but you know, if you're an Ultra HD collector and you don't get a movie because you think it's a 2K upscale and not worth it, you're really depriving yourself. So yeah, this one is, I think, more in an internal, you know, pet peeve when it comes to us collectors, but it's something I wanted to mention, and I do want to hear your thoughts on this particular issue. When it comes to collections or movies that are in multiple series, or, you know, like the James Bond films, or, you know, something like that, the Fast and Furious movies, and 4K being somewhat a niche market, there's also the worry of box sets, you know, being implemented where there is not going to be an option for individual releases. So I would say, once again, Universal being a big one when it comes to this. Recently, the Alfred Hitchcock collection came out on 4K Blu-ray. It was awesome. The packaging could have used a little bit of work, but at the time, they did not release individual copies other than Psycho. Well, since then, they have done so, and I personally, when I collect something, I don't like box sets. I like individual releases. I like to go in alphabetical order on my shelf, but I wish they would convey, you know, in the future that they plan to release individual titles. I understand why they don't do that. They want to sell the box sets and everything like that. But also you take the risk of not getting that individual release. The Jurassic Park movies here on 4K, the first 3 movies, or 4 movies actually, have only been given a box set here in the States. Whereas the latest Jurassic Park movie was given an individual release and also option for a box set. But then you have the Alfred Hitchcock collection, which got individual releases. The upcoming Universal Monsters collection, which is thankfully getting individual releases day and date. But going back to the James Bond films, when they were released on 4K, it took several months for individual releases to be announced. So I would like to see a little bit more like transparency when it came to the release strategy. But it is something that I would like to see rectified in the future. You know, by nature, pretty much all these pet peeves are very subjective. I understand that, but when it comes to this last point, I feel this one is especially more so. And this is going to be based on a person-by-person basis, and not everybody will agree, of course. But for me, the artwork on 4K releases, especially, I would say most of them, is, you know, I would say very uninspiring to the point of being a little lazy. I remember back in the Laserdisc days, there was such a great amount of artwork on these titles being released that I would easily poster up any of these and hang it on my wall. Like they were that good in my opinion. And DVD, I felt, also had a good amount of artwork when it came to, you know, just their covers. They look great. And I felt the shift kind of changing around the Blu-ray implementation. I felt that studios were a little bit lazy. They kind of got to a point where they just wanted to Photoshop heads on a cover and call it a day. It wasn't, you know, of course there's exceptions to every rule. And here in 4K, I kind of feel it's kind of carried on that tradition from the Blu-ray a little bit more so than what we got originally on, you know, the earliest physical media days. You know, there are movies that I felt recently that, like, say, Space Jam, their Steelbook edition, you know, sure, why not? That one was the most basic, you know, cover for a Steelbook. And of course, you also had the recent release of Guy Ritchie's Snatch on 4K. Sony likes to do their pop cover art for these releases, but I really am just struggling to figure out the decision behind that one. It even got to the point where me as a Steelbook collector just picked up the normal slipcover because it was actually a better version. And then of course slipcovers also were not great. You know, let's say Gremlins, I felt deserved a better slipcover art than what we got, you know, in reality. And I mean, there's an extensive list of titles that I can name, but yeah, for me, artwork, you know, it's important. I understand it sits on a shelf and you're not going to see it most of the time, but you should actually be able to appreciate it when you do take it out. So yeah, this one, once again, very subjective, but it's something I did want to mention. So those are my pet peeves of being a 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray collector. Thank you for bearing with me. It's just something you got to talk about from time to time, but now it's your turn in the comment section below. What are some pet peeves of yours? You know, that as being a physical movie collector, what are things that bother you? And let's talk about it in the comments section. In the meantime, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. So until next time, this is Adam with Movie Guy 365. I will see you at the movies.